A common question I get from students and my followers is, should I practice with the metronome? The answer depends. In this video, I'm going to tell you what is more important. Actually, there are two things that are more important than practicing with the metronome. I'm going to tell you if you're ready to practice with the metronome. I'm going to tell you when is the right time for you to practice with the metronome. And finally, how to practice with the metronome. And the favorite way for me to start my students on metronome. Hi, I'm Kristina Lee, and welcome to Live Love Piano. If you're interested in more thorough and systematic approach to learning to play the piano, please check out my courses, Simple and Beautiful Piano for Adult Beginners and Piano Mastery Intermediate. Now let's get back to our topic, which is about practicing with the metronome. Let's think about a case. A student or someone who's consulting with me comes and says, I practice with metronome. And when I check them, they're playing, it's all off in terms of the rhythm and the steady beat. So I said, well, show me how you've done it. So they put the metronome on. So I'm just going to use this. By the way, this is my go-to for metronome, and it's called Pro Metronome. And I'm going to show you how to use this more effectively as well. So this is the beat, and let's say that we're going to play Bach Minuet in G. So they say, and they say, yeah, I've been practicing with the metronome. Do you see that there's a problem here? They are practicing with the metronome, like the metronome is doing its thing and they're practicing, but they're not synced. So there's no point in practicing with the metronome if you're not synced. The whole idea is syncing your playing with the metronome. And to be able to do that, you have to have two things in place. And these two things are more important than actually practicing with the metronome. You have to have these two things before you can successfully and effectively practice with the metronome. The first thing you need is to understand what steady beat is. Bum, 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 bum. Let's say that our piece is in 3, so we're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That is steady beat. This is not 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's simple. The concept is simple, but it's not always simple when you're trying to actually play an instrument and keep that steady beat. And most often, students are not able to play steadily until they know the notes and they have a consistent fingering. And if you're playing everything together, they have to also have coordination. But let's say that you're just learning something like Minuet in G again, and we're going to just work on the right hand melody first, which is also always a good place to start. One of the most effective way to learn to play a piece is by vocalizing. You can sing the pitches, or you don't have to sing the pitches. You can just practice the rhythm. So it's 1, 2, 3, ba 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 ba. Or you can look at your music and you can have your metronome going, or you can have something to keep you in steady beat and work on that rhythm. Ba 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 ba. Another way to do is just to sing it. I sing a lot in my teaching. I make my students sing, and it's not about the level of your singing or quality of your singing. The bottom line is that if you're working on any kind of music, whether it's singing or instrument, you need to be able to vocalize the music. The vocalization is the manifestation of what you understand musically inside of you. And this is why I have my students vocalize it for me. You know, singing is one of them, but it doesn't have to be like perfect pitch or anything like that. So you can go, this is my steady beat. Can I put these notes into my steady beat? Ba, 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 bum, 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 bum. So before you can practice effectively with metronome, you have to have sense of steady beat. Of course, you practice with the metronome so that you can refine your steady beat, both your understanding and application. But before you can do that, you have to start somewhere with grasping steady beat. The second thing that's more important than practicing with the metronome that you have to have in place before you start practicing with the metronome effectively and efficiently and successfully is to understand the counting. Minuet in G, it's in 3/4. That means there are 3 beats in a measure. Let's figure out where our beats are. It's here and here and here. I can even draw long lines to show vertically how they all align. And I will often have my students write the counting, and you would count 1. Here's our 1, 2, 3, right? But that's not enough. We actually have to subdivide this music into 8th notes. What does that mean? That means the smallest note value, meaning duration, the length of the note that we have is an 8th note in this piece. So an 8th note looks like this when it's by itself, but more often you see multiple of them. So you see the beam over 2 8th notes or 4 8th notes. So this is the smallest value of the note that we have. So we have to count based on the smallest value of the note. So we say 1 and 2 and 3 and then here too, 1 and 2 and 3 and. This is how I start my students with counting, like subdividing every beat. Do we need to, in the second measure, do we need to say 1 and 2 and 3 and? We don't have to say it, but if you're not used to counting correctly with steady beat, you can be like 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3. That's not steady beat. You're like actually skipping all the ands in the second beat, which makes the quarter notes, these quarter notes, more like 8th notes. We don't want that. So we say 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now we have the counting correctly and steady beat. Now counting is really important. What is counting? Counting is more than just like getting the length of the notes right. That's definitely the beginning of it, but sometimes it's not just about that. It's more about where the notes are in a measure. We have to know as musicians, if we play a note, is it on the second beat of the measure or third beat of the measure? It's quite important because our music, at the end of the day, we don't want to play our music like metronome. We don't want it to be so robotic. We actually accelerate and decelerate a little bit, give and take. It's just part of how music moves. And It doesn't have anything to do with actually like whether you see a retardando or acceleration. Our written notation does not tell us everything about every single thing that goes on when you perform. Actually, when you perform, when you play the music, a lot more happens. Like just because you see a forte in a section doesn't mean that every single note has that same forte loudness dynamics. Forte is the overall concept behind that section. In that same way, we have a little more flexibility with our steady beat as well. We might go 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. And do you see how I change the speed a little bit? 1 and 2 and right, like this, right? Or sometimes you'll go na 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 na. This happens. In good music, this organic movement happens. But what we musicians do is that we always are still counting. We're not guessing. We're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. It doesn't matter if we're accelerating or decelerating. We're still counting with the right counting. That's why these two things need to be there before you can successfully start practicing with the metronome. Probably not perfectly as if you're ready for performance, but some shape of that have to be in there. If you don't have any clue of that, you're just not ready to practice with the metronome. So now you're ready to practice with the metronome. You have an idea of your steady beat, and you have an idea of how the counting works, the basic rhythm of your piece. So where do you start? First is that you have to find the right tempo. Most students practice too fast. The tempo that you should be choosing is based on the toughest part of your piece. Let's say that we're working on minuet in G again. I can play the beginning well, but then I go. So, dun, 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 dun. You see how that part is the slowest part? Your tempo should be based on that part. Bum, 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 bum. 1 and 2 and 3 and. That should be your tempo, not bum, ba, 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 bum, bum, bum. Let me show you what you can do with the Pro Metronome. You see on the bottom right corner, you have this tap. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. If you can continue to do this, it will find the right tempo for you. So tune bum 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 bum. So, you know, I actually wasn't perfectly sync with the metronome because I actually didn't take time to listen to the beats first and internalize it. And that's something that everyone should do. This is why when musicians play together, they go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is how we start feeling the music, the tempo of the music before we play. So whenever you practice with the metronome, you don't go. You'll never get it right. You gotta let a measure or two pass by and then try to vocalize or sing the music in your head. So that's the first thing, finding the right tempo. Now this is a very slow tempo, 44. That means there are 44 beats in a measure. And at this tempo, it's really hard to feel that regular sense of pulse. So it would probably best if we subdivide the metronome beats so we can start hearing the eighth note beats. You can easily do that by doubling the number. So 44, we're just going to make it 88. We don't change the tempo of our music. We just feel the smaller beats better. And because you're feeling the smaller pulses, it's easier to keep track of how long the pulses are. So you can just do that by doubling. Okay. Another thing you can do with Pro Metronome is to use subdivision. And this is why I recommend that everybody just pays for the paid version. I think it's like $5 or $6 or $7 or $8. It's totally worth it. You can press the top right where it says subdiv, okay, and we're going to choose eighth notes. 3 and 1 and 2 and 3, and so it gives us the eighth note pulses. One of my favorite features of Pro Metronome actually is that I can use the counting tone. So if you start going backwards,
2 and 3 and
number 14 is the counting.
2 and 3 and 1 and 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 2 and 3 and.
So going back to what I said about you have to understand and know the counting, this is a really good way to just stay with the counting, and without having to count out loud yourself, you can internalize the counting by listening and playing together. And then it just helps you to also internalize where you're in the measure, which I said is also very important skill to have. When you're practicing with metronome, make sure that you synchronize and you're not rushing. Rushing is something that happens a lot when people start becoming comfortable with metronome. In the beginning, just synchronizing feels difficult, but then once you start feeling the pulse, it's actually quite calming. And then you just kind of settle into it and you might start thinking less. And then that's when students start rushing. So rushing is a sign of being out of control. So remember that when we are playing an instrument, it is a physical thing. When we work on our physical aspect of music, it's very important for us to have control of what we're doing. And rushing is a big sign of being out of control or feeling anxious or ignoring something. So watch out for that. For a music student, for a piano student, the metronome is the strictest music tutor you will ever have. When you practice right with the metronome, it will reveal all your flaws, much, much, much more than a human teacher. That's why it is actually really important that you practice with metronome at the right time. You want to use it to refine your steady beat and your counting and your rhythm. If you don't have some of those things, it's just going to be a very discouraging and aggravating experience. You just want to be at that right place where the metronome can really make your playing really elevated and refined, and it will do for sure. If you practice with metronome correctly, it's going to refine your steady beat. It's going to refine your sense of rhythm, and it's just gonna bring everything together in your music better, and your music will sound better. And actually, being able to feel all these things that I talked about today, steady beat and rhythm, will actually give you the ability to play with your tempo more. Having control over steady beat and rhythm will also give you the tools to shape your music to accelerate or decelerate or ritardando in a really musical way without just guessing or being random slowdown or something like that. So I hope this video was helpful. For beginners, I want to remind you about my course again. One of the first things we do in the course is just working on counting. And I have pieces where really the focus is learning the rhythm, counting, and coordination without a huge burden of reading. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet so you get more lessons like this. And good luck, and I will see you in my next video.